Last little piece of this, we'll go back and talk a little bit about the chloride issue from a standpoint of what this is costing us. And in some respects, we've been getting information about it, and in some respects we have not. So we've been doing a little bit of digging. And let's just get started again, kind of where we left off last month, where we talked about community conservation solutions, the fact that our water board, our sanitation board, who really is made up of our city council, 2 members of our council, plus 1 member of the board of supervisors, had given them $350,000 in November 2011 to do public outreach. And then again in September, on September the 12th of 2012, they gave them another $201,000. And where what we talked about last time was that on March 13th, on the agenda for March 13th in 2012, there was another $334,000 given to them, or proposed to give to them for public outreach. And at the time, we contacted the Board of Supervisors, and that ended up not passing, and it was continued. So that's kind of where we're at, where we're starting this conversation from where we left off at the last meeting. So what transpired from that point was at the March 26th City Council meeting. By the way, our sanitation board is always made up of our mayor and 1 other council member and a supervisor. And the chairperson supervisor is the one in our district, and then there are others that become the alternate. And so Mayor Keller gave us a report about community conservation solutions. And what he did was he read a couple of pages of information directly from the Community Conservation Solutions website and talked about what a great person the founder was. And I think it's interesting because Councilmember West has been a board member of Community Conservation Solutions for at least the last 6 years. Now, to Councilman West's credit, she has recused herself from the votes that have allocated funds to Community Conservation Solutions. And there had been some discussion on the blogs that if she received any compensation from them, that would have then been a conflict of interest no matter whether or not she had not recused herself. So I went back and I pulled the Community Conservation Solutions tax returns for the last 6 years. And they indicate that Councilmember West was not compensated through that time. So from the standpoint of strict legality, she does not have a conflict of interest as it's defined by the state statutes. My concern is that if you're a board member on a board that makes decisions about large expenditures of funds, and you're also on the board of the recipient of that same company, that may not be illegal, but to me, it's not ethical. So on April the 10th, from the April the 10th Sanitation Board meeting, we had a City Council meeting the day before on April the 9th, and I went up and I spoke again and asked for more information about what they were going to do, and they didn't talk about it at all. And I think that's an interesting thing, because what they did was they said, because of the Brown Act, and this was reaffirmed by our attorney, our city attorney, that it was inappropriate for them to talk about it because they were about to go make a decision on it. And so they instead decided not to speak about it at all. But what did happen was they went to the Sanitation Board on April the 10th, and they voted to give Community Conservation Solutions $334,000 in addition. That would bring the total amount that they had got to $885,000. Now, at that board meeting, this comes off of the first part of this comes off of the Sanitation District Board meeting resolution. It talks about that company, and it was previously retained after a competitive selection process to conduct public outreach. And I want you to remember that for the rest of this conversation. One thing about it was we talked about the competitive selection process when they were first picked. If you remember, the competitive selection process was the fact that the sanitation districts picked 5 companies. It wasn't an open bid. They picked 5 companies. They notified Community Conservation Solutions early that they were going to perform the selection, and then they picked that company. But they were picked to conduct public outreach activities. And one thing that Mayor Keller did when he talked about them was he talked about a report that they had generated of their activities. And so I asked for it. He indicated that he was going to give it to each one of the council members. I went up and I asked him for one, and he told me that he would give me that. And so it will tell us exactly how much public outreach we received for $551,000. So this is just a cover, show that it's really there. It has no date on it. So I dated it when I received it, that I received it from Mayor Keller on the 5th of April 2005. So you would assume that everything in here that they said they've done before April the 5th, 2013, not 2005. So if you go through here, some of this stuff isn't that easy to read, so I don't expect you to, but it talks about some of the different tasks. We had seen their contract at one time, and these tasks relate to the contract that they have, where they evaluate public outreach efforts. They review property owner opposition. They identify and research the relevant technical issues. But in fact, they don't do any public outreach. What they do is hold meetings, have emails and discussions with the city staff and the sanitation district staff. Now, I find that very interesting, because all this time we've been told by our council that they have no purview over this issue, that there's nothing that they can discuss because they're all sanitation district activities. But in fact, staff has been spending money, and staff has been coordinating with this company, and for all we know, the sanitation district staff as well. So you can see throughout what's going on. We do have a horse in this race. If we look at task number 2, the first thing that they say that they've done is to analyze financial data about the technical and financial data and impacts to the state chloride issue on the Santa Clarita Valley. We've been asking for that ever since the scoping meeting, and we were constantly told that they don't have that information. So if they don't have it, it's a very interesting thing that Community Conservation Solutions got to review it. I bet you know where this is going. What they also did was they talked about that they designed and conducted a survey, and we showed you that survey from Public Opinion Strategies. Public Opinion Strategies ran 2 surveys of the Santa Clarita Valley and talked to our residents as to whether they were willing to accept the fees and costs, and of course they were very unsuccessful. If you remember, the only way we got to see that survey was to do a public records request. And now that we've done a public records request and we've talked about it, those surveys are now available on the Sanitation District's website. They supposedly conducted and analyzed results from 2 in-depth focus groups. Well, I don't know who they were with. I haven't met anybody in the public that has talked about being a part of any group that Community Conservation Solutions has met with. So it's an interesting question. And here again, they talk about a presentation of findings and also discussing their results with City of Santa Clarita staff and Sanitation District staff. So this is not a misprint. We know that this is actually what they talked about. Now, to not belabor this and keep you trying to read these things that are hard to read, I just picked out some highlights of some of the tasks that go on and on after that. One of it in task number 3 is a presentation of findings and meetings and emails and discussions with city staff. Task number 5, coordinated review and editing and approval of all materials by city staff. Track stakeholder results, meeting results, and areas of confusion requiring clarification. I don't know who the stakeholders are, but I know it wasn't any of you, and hasn't been anybody that I've spoke with. Task number 6, coordinate with the city, track and report on online postings, websites, and blogs, and we know that they're doing that. Task number 7, reviewed the CCAC documents and the EIR. I didn't think they were available yet. They're not available yet. How did they review them? And reviewed and made recommended changes to the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District's outreach materials and notice of preparation and draft EIR. Now, the notice of preparation, I'll show you a timeline, occurred in February of 2012. But the draft EIR isn't done yet. So it's very interesting how they did that. What I found most interesting, though, was this page, task number 8. At the top of task number 8, it says, meetings when were completed, meetings, phone calls, and emails with city staff, Ken Polskamp, Ken Strickland, Robert Newman, Gail Ortiz, Travis Lang, Michael Murphy, to coordinate details and contact of all public opinion research, outreach materials, media outreach, and stakeholder meetings. So here again, there is no way that our council can hide behind the attorney and say that they have no horse in this race. The next thing it talks about is presented material information at meetings with the Valley Industrial Association, Chamber of Commerce, Building Industry of Southern California, Economic Development Corp., and on and on and on. So when I got this, I just happened to be sitting next to the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I was sitting next to Terry Crane, and I said, Terry, have you met with Community Conservation Solutions? Have you met with the Sanitation District? And she said, oh, no, Al, that's the meeting that we're going to have on June the 2nd. Really? So I took this picture before I asked the other question, and that was on the 5th. So on the 9th, I asked Jonas Peterson, have you met, he's the head of the Economic Development Corp., have you met with Community Conservation Solutions or the Sanitation District? And they said, oh, no, that's the meeting that's going to be on June the 2nd. We want you to be there. So that meeting hasn't taken place yet. So then it talks about that they have compiled the information from the meetings and followed and coordinated with all the meeting attendees. So I thought that was very interesting. And you know what happens when I find things interesting. Anyway, so what I did was I decided that it's time to ask for the information. So I put in a public records request to the City of Santa Clarita. It's still pending. Okay, it's probably got another week before they're going to answer me. And I said, please provide all meeting agendas, preparation materials, meeting minutes, phone logs, and emails involving Community Conservation Solutions and city staff members, Polskamp, Strickland, Newman, Ortiz, Lang, Murphy, for the period of 2011 to present. And then I talked about of special interest, I'm interested in their activities with Community Conservation Solutions on the chloride issue. I also decided maybe I should ask the Sanitation District the same thing. So I put in a records request to the Sanitation District, and I went down this list of the things that we were just talking about, and I said, please provide me, again, all meeting agendas, materials, meeting minutes, phone logs, between the Sanitation District and Community Conservation Solutions for a period of 2011 to present. Let me see all of the materials, all the analysis of technical and financial impacts. This is all the stuff they said they did, right? You guys were all paying attention? The materials and results when they designed and analyzed the results of 2 in-depth focus meetings, the results of the confusing technical and environmental issues, the presentation materials for the presentation of findings from Task 2, the results of track stakeholder meetings. Let's see now. The tracking of online postings, websites, and blogs, results of the CEQA and draft EIR, and please show me all the presentation materials and results from the meetings that you had with the Valley Industrial Association, Chamber of Commerce, Building Industrial Association, Economic Development Corp., and all the others for the period of 2011 to 2013. I think what we see is that we have spent $885,000 to do consulting work with the Sanitation District and with the City of Santa Clarita. We haven't spent that money and had any public outreach. As a matter of fact, no one from the Sanitation District wanted to talk about anything until the EIR was ready to go. And it's not ready to go until the end of this month. And we'll show you where that comes from. So we'll wait and see. By next month, the EIR will be out. The public records request should be available, and we should be able to know a lot more about this. But this is your money. What you saw was the results of $551,000, $500,000, a lot more than I have in my pocket. And what did we get, and what did the public receive? So we're going to find that out. The next question we had to ask was, how much did the EIR cost? If we spent $885,000 to do public outreach that we didn't do, what did the EIR cost? So the reason that came up again was because we saw on March the 13th that they wanted to spend another $187,000 with a company called Environmental Science Associates to finish the EIR. And what they said about it was that they wanted to do that to allow them to respond to public comments received during review period of the scoping meetings and so forth. So we had requested records to try to determine what this cost of all of the expenditures that had been approved to generate the EIR. And if you remember this, if you went to any of the scoping meetings, did some of you go to the scoping meetings? This was the timeline that the Sanitation District let out for us. And they said, you know what, here it is, February 2012, and we're going to do the scoping meetings for this environmental impact report, and we're going to look at all these different alternatives. Remember this? All the different alternatives that we're going to look at to decide what it is that we really need to do. And then in July of 2012, that's the red line, it's in red because it didn't happen, we're going to show you the preliminary EIR. Now, we said that's really nice. But when we look at the expenditures of funds that they came out with, they waited until June 13th. Remember, they were supposed to be done in July. They waited till June 13th to fund EAS $304,000 to do the facilities plan. And at the same time, they said, you know what, we're going to use the majority of the material from the EIR that was funded in 2009 at $738,000. And the water study that we commissioned with CLWA for another $150,000. So here it is, their company that's supposed to actually been finalizing the preliminary EIR doesn't get funded until a month before it's due. Well, it wasn't too surprising that it was late. And when it was late, they said the reason why it's late is because we have all these alternatives to look at. We have all these answers because of all the comments that we received from the public. So we're working as hard as we can, but guys, we're not done yet. So here we are 9 months later, and they're saying, at the end of April, we'll give you an answer. And I don't think we would have got that if the Regional Water Board hadn't fined us $280,000 and said, you know what, you guys are dragging your heels. But what did they do again? They funded on March the 13th $187,000 to the ESA to answer the questions that the public asked 9 months earlier. So here, a month before it's supposed to come out, the company finally gets the funding. I don't know about your company down there, but most companies aren't going to work without a contract and without money. So if you look at this, now the EIR draft date is supposed to be available on April the 30th. It'll be a full 9 months late. And the final EIR then, by the agreement with the Regional Water Board, will be out in October of 2013. So here are the groupings of the different allocation of funds to both Environmental Science Associates, Community Conservation Solutions, CLWA, and you can see that from November 2011, when they started the scoping meetings, till March of 2013, they funded about $1,376,000 on this effort. But they were also going to include another $888,000 of previous work, which adds up to $2,264,000 that's been going into this document. So that's really funding. That's really following the money using the sanitation district agenda items. But we know that that's not all the money. We know that just like the city of Santa Clarita, staff funding is established in the budgeting process. And it just happens that if you receive the sanitation district agendas like I do, probably won't after they see this, then what's going to happen is in April, you get to see their budget for the year. So if we follow the money using the budget process, we can see that in 2011, on this activity, they spent $645,000. Those numbers that I showed you of the agenda items are buried in here. In 2012, $2,221,000. And in 2013, they want to spend another $1,435,000, totaling up to $4,301,000. Now, is that all? Of course not. If we look at their budgets, just to give you an idea, this comes off the budget document from the year 2012-2013. And it says in that year, they were going to spend an estimated $1.6 million of board-directed activities to work on chloride TDML issues. And then the things that are underlined are basically this. $975,000 public outreach for the Santa Clarita community, legal efforts to assess options, and legislative relief, evaluation of UV disinfection, studies of water options, and continued negotiations with the state regulators. Now, I want you to remember that because this is going to be interesting when we get to the end. Then also $650,000 for facilities planning efforts, including some of the preliminary work needed for the evaluation of the alternatives. And what happened is, between the time they budgeted in 2012 and between the time they budgeted in 2013, that number grew from $1,625,000 to $2,221,000. And how do I know that? I saw the 2013 budget, which showed the actuals from 2012. And here again, they talk about what they're going to do. And if you break it down, they want to spend $1,435,000, $150,000 on legal efforts, $875,000 on district staff evaluating alternatives, $200,000 on environmental sciences associates. I think that's interesting because that number doesn't look like the number they allocated to them. They allocated $187,000. And notice $210,000 a community conservation solution, so they must believe the community conservation solution is going to spend a fair amount of the money that they just gave them, $334,000 this year. So if you go ahead and you look at that, you add it all up between the 3 years, now we're up to $4,301,000. And if you add in the previous work, it's $5,189,000. Remember who gets to pay this, guys. It's not the sanitation district, it's us. But that's not all. Because we don't know how much money sanitation district staff spent when ESA spent that $738,000. We don't know what that number is. And we don't know how much the city of Santa Clarita spent on the EIR effort. We're going to ask, but we don't know now. So what's wrong with those numbers?
When you talk about sanitation, is that county sanitation?
Well, no, the county sanitation districts, plural, there are plural districts. We are one of those districts. We are the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District. We are one of the LA County districts, so we use their services, similar to the way we use the Sheriff's Department, where the overall Sheriff's Department is over all of LA County, and we use their technical services, and we pay for them. I can show you how much they get us every year for that. But we don't have a totally separate sanitation district. And that's one of the things that I'm going to keep harping on is sanitation district meetings for the Santa Clarita Valley should happen in Santa Clarita, not in Whittier. Okay? And from what I understand, the sanitation district meetings don't take very long. They snap through these things very quickly. Alan Cameron was at the last meeting, came back and reported to me some of the things that happened. And so with spending $5,189,000, they're now saying that they're not going to include costing data. Would someone like to tell me how in their right mind they're going to be able to determine what's the most cost-effective approach between all their alternatives if they don't have costs with it? But we're going to ask that question. Have no fear. So what's wrong with those numbers? Well, I read what they gave me. And they also had something in here about this. Let me see if I had that. Yeah. The budget also included another $700,000. The budget supposedly included another $700,000 for continued removal of automatic water softeners. And they indicated that over the next 3 years, they want to spend $3,300,000 to do it. Maybe we could just get pest control to get rid of it, right? But and they're hoping to get a $2.4 million state grant. But if they don't get it, guess who gets to pay the $3.3 million? The part that I can't find is where it is in the budget. Because they say in the back here that although the projected total of OEM costs related to the operation of water treatment plants has been relatively flat, and it has. If I can look at the 2012 numbers to the 2013 numbers, and they're pretty close to the same. They inflate a little bit, but not much. So if all of a sudden you had another $700,000 in the 2013 numbers, you would expect to see a $700,000 jump in one of these areas, but you don't. So I don't know where that number is. So on May the 2nd, it's May, not June, on May the 2nd, at the University Center of the College of Canyons, the Industrial Association, Economic Development Corporation, Chamber of Commerce, and Building Industry Association will get a presentation from Basil Hewitt on the chloride plan, and they're going to receive feedback. It's going to give these guys about a month to review the EIR If you are a member of any of those organizations, then I would suggest that you call and say you want to attend. I've been invited to go, so I will be there. And you know, I told you last time that you wouldn't be surprised if I went and called Basil and say, hey, when are you coming here? So I have received a note from Mr. Hewitt that he will be at the June 17th, 2013 County Country Advisory Committee meeting, so that you can save up your questions. And I'm going to ask if we're going to have representatives from Community Conservation Solutions to see what's going on. So in conclusion, I'm even more concerned than I was last month. Are we being sold a bill of goods? I don't understand how they can present to us an EIR with no costs and not claim that they've sold us haven't sold us a bill of goods, or haven't made a decision behind the scenes. Or why wouldn't they release costing data if they supposedly had it a year ago? And I got to tell you, it really seems like we have people that are driving this decision, and unless we get together and start pushing back, this is going to happen without any questions asked. So we need to keep asking questions. Again, watch as this drama plays out. We'll have more information for you next month about the EIR. And the main thing we need to do is hold our officials accountable, our elected officials accountable. Remember, this isn't something that happened yesterday. Our elected officials have been playing with this for close to 10 years. I mean, this is something that anybody that has been on the Santa Cruz City Council and has been the mayor has been on this board. And so they all share some responsibility. The only person that hasn't been on that board yet is Mr. Boydston. But all the rest of them have been on the board at one time or another and should be able to talk to us about what the situation is. And we'll go back and ask. I'm going to go back and ask again at the next council meeting. And now that I know that they do have a dog in the race, I'm hoping they're going to start answering. But we'll see. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What's the chances of our sanitation district divorcing itself from the main sanitation district in Whittier? We pay every cent for all the facilities. We pay every cent to operate it. We do own it. We should get ourselves away from the main sanitation district.
Well, I got to tell you what. We pay Whittier for administration, $500,000 a year, and for technical services, about $4.5 million a year. And I don't see any reason why we aren't investigating what it would take. What would that number be if we were on our own? Especially if we're not going to be part of the joint outfall system. I don't see what benefit we get being a part of the LA County sanitation system. Certainly, a lot of our developers that are planning large developments are not joining that sanitation district. Newhall Ranch will have its own sanitation district. Vista Canyon Ranch will have their own sanitation district. So I don't see why we're a part of this either. Right now, the sanitation district collects from us, by their numbers on here, they collect $22 million a year from us. They get on the current 2013 numbers, we pay $247 per sanitation unit. There's 92,432 sanitation units in our Santa Cruz Valley Sanitation District. That multiplies out to $22 million. And certainly covers more than just running the plant. So to give you a few of these numbers, if you can remember them off your head, I'll be happy to show them to you. In operation and maintenance, we pay the sanitation district coming for 2013 $530,000. We pay them in technical services $4.6 million. Local sewer maintenance is $425,000, and the treatment facility is $15,960,000. Altogether, that we cover it with the $22 million fee. Anybody else got any other questions? This is a somber issue, and hopefully tell your friends to look at the video, because this is something that is going to mean big money, and they'll see on their sanitation bill. Yes.
Al, are you going to be emailing us that particular document with all of those dollar amounts?
I can.
Please.
Would you like the? I'll tell you what. I'll send you that, but I'll go one step better. I'll send you these. This is the April 10th, 2013 Sanitation District Agenda. What it includes is it includes the agenda for the meeting, the yearly Sanitation District report, and the Sanitation District budget for 2013. It shows the adjusted numbers for 2012 and the numbers for 2013. I have the same document for 2012, okay, because we've been getting these things now for a year. So anybody that wants this, just let me know. I'll be happy to give it to them. This is something that you shouldn't have to ask them for. I'll give it to you. And what you'll see also is you'll see the way they break the numbers down change year to year, or at least from this year to this year. So in some cases, it's a little hard to correlate between the 2 years. But yeah, you can read them, figure out what's going on yourself. That's really good. So you understand what's really happening.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well.